Morning. Hope you all doing well today, wherever you are in the world. My name is Nick. This is Otto. This is the See At Our Permaculture vlog. Today we're going to talk about another one of the another one of the permaculture principles. Today we're going to talk about another one of the permaculture principles. This time, catch and store energy. Now, there's some pretty obvious ones that people think of there. You think solar power catches sun's energy and store it in batteries, and then we can reuse that energy in the future. That's a really great, easy example, right? But today what I'm actually going to talk about is more the natural ways of doing that. The ways you can store energy in your landscape, in your backyard, and how nature itself stores energy. And the four things we're mainly going to try to talk about today are water, soil, trees, and seed. Water, soil, trees, and seed. Those are the four kind of main energy storages that we can think about as in the natural system. And so we're going to explore that a little bit. So without further ado, I did not mention yet the weather, but it has been raining a pretty decent amount, enough to keep everything happy without me watering, which is nice. It hasn't been getting hot, but then we're getting some nice some nice rain at night. So I wake up in the morning, everything's a little wet and everything's freshly watered for the day, for the sunny day ahead of them. So yeah, for now, without further ado, let's get started. All right, of course we're going to be we got to make sure the chickens are all right and do all the chores as usual for the morning while we talk about this. But the first place actually I'm going to talk about in terms of water storage is my roof here. I have not set this up yet, but my plan is to essentially catch rainwater off of this roof here, store it into a small tank, and then use that for their drinking water. So instead of me having to go and fill up water and make sure it's clean and all that, I'm just going to have a big clean container that I store all their water in. It's all rainwater, nice and fresh, especially here because we're in the middle of a forest here, so the rainwater is nice and clean. In some places, if you live downwind of some sort of factory or anything like that, maybe not so much a clean water source for you, but here, definitely a very, very clean water source. It's coming right probably from the moisture in the air, coming off of the ocean flows over there and then coming right to us. So nice and clean. And also mostly, unless you're living near one of those factories, those the natural processes just in the atmosphere are going to keep that water nice and clean for you. So it'll clean it for you, and then when it gets to your house, it'll be super clean. So in terms of like a storage in a tank or something like that, like most people would think of in terms of catch and store energy, definitely that's one way to do it. So catching water off of this small roof here, I mean, this is a very small, I think it's 4 by 3 or something like that. It's a very small roof, but I can catch quite a decent amount of water from here in our rain events because we have pretty regular rain events just because we are in a tropical rainforest climate. So this will be an area that I will catch and store water, and I also plan on catching and storing water off of the roof itself. And I'm going to do that on a tank that's sitting as far up on the property as I can, so I can then use gravity-fed irrigation to water everything throughout the property. So those are our future goals, and when I do get around to those projects, I'm of course going to take you guys along the ride with me so you can kind of see how to do that and what I'm doing and get some inspiration for yourself. But in the actual soil, we can store water. And you can do that essentially by building up the organic matter within your soil. For every 1% increase in soil organic matter in 1 acre of land, you get about 25,000 extra gallons of water storage. That's just 1% increase in organic matter, and that's really easy to do. If you basically just apply some compost, make sure you have the microbiology in the soil, and then grow a couple cover crops, like maybe like 2 seasons of cover crops, then you pretty much are going to be at the point where you're increasing that soil organic matter just that much, because soil organic matter is both a mixture of just stuff that's fallen on the soil, mulch and all that, and the stuff that the critters are moving around, but it's also dead and dying root systems that are in the ground, and the roots and the fungi and all those different things that are in the soil. They contribute to that kind of soil organic matter and life in the soil. So the more you can get into your soil, the better. So if you're starting something from some brand new, if it's just completely dirt, nothing there, First of all, you got to get the biology into the soil, and that's the best way, easiest way to do that is a compost application, high quality compost application. And then grow cover crops. Instead of going right from something that is not great soil and trying to produce crops, start with a cover crop. Start with something that's going to put a bunch of nitrogen in the soil for you, and then let that basically cut it, let all those roots that have been growing in the soil decompose, and that's going to all add to that soil organic matter. So when you then go to plant, you're going to have much more water holding capacity within your soil already. Let's get these chickens fed. They're yammering for me. Ooh. So of course I've just come to feed them, but they actually still have food from yesterday. So I don't like to add too much food to my chickens because there's just much more of a chance that they're going to knock the whole thing over and spill it. And while they will eat the food off of the ground, I just don't want them to get so much in there because I'm using a deep mulch system and it can easily get mixed down and then just never get eaten by them. So, how you doing, Mama? What are you doing? Being very sweet this morning. What's gone into you? She's usually really mad at me for intruding upon her morning experience. Look, I'm going to give you a little fresh just so you can see that I gave you food. Look, oh my God, there's food. Probably had like 20 pebbles. Although pretty interested in coming into the chicken area here. The rooster, though, would not allow it. Our rooster can easily take our cat, so I never really worry too much about the cat getting involved. The cat actually really likes to provoke the rooster. He'll go right up to the fence and pretend to attack, and then the rooster will do his little rooster dance and go right back at Otto, and Otto runs real fast. Do y'all's cats eat chicken feed? He seems to be eating the chicken feed that has fallen. I guess it's probably somewhat meat based. I don't know, I feel like it's mostly grain based, so I don't know why he'd be eating it. So storing water in the soil, that's a really great one. And there's many ways, like we were just talking about, increasing soil organic matter. That's a great way to help with that. And another great way to help with that is once you kind of have that, your soil built up and you're happy and everything's good there, you can also mulch. So mulching basically just protects the soil from those harsh rays of the sun, and especially in the tropics here, that's a really great thing. When you mulch, what happens is instead of evaporating when the sun's hitting it, this top layer is going to dry out a little bit instead of the bottom layer. You can think of mulch essentially as a blanket for your soil. Mulch is basically a blanket for your soil, and that's how I like to think about it. Sorry guys. You just got knocked over a little bit because I have you on a slope. Let's see. Good boy. There we go. So yeah, you can think of mulch as essentially like a blanket. It's a blanket for your soil so that you basically get your plants in the ground, they have their compost, everything's nice and right, you transplant your nice kale in here, and then you mulch around it. It's kind of like tucking it in. During the spring and the temperate climates, you might want your soils to dry out and warm up, and you might not want to have some mulch on them, and it's completely understandable, and I would agree with you there. And then also in the tropics, right after rainy season, if you're in a wet, dry tropics climate, then right after rainy season, you might actually want to have your soil slightly exposed just to dry out. But in the tropics, I've noticed soil dries out very quickly. So doing anything you can to prevent it from going completely dry is going to be a benefit to you, because water is very, very important for all plant growth. I mean, that's just an obvious statement, right? Everyone's like, oh, of course, Nick, but you need adequate water supply in order to get good plant growth, and you need adequate water supply at the right times. So well, that's what's really great about catching and storing water. If you can catch and store it in a tank and then use that as rainwater irrigation, that's perfect, right? But if you can store soil within your landscape somehow, that's going to be even better for you. So on this small little property here, this path right here is actually a water sink. So This path is designed to do two things. One, it is designed to drain. So it's designed to take excess water, which we often have here because we are in the tropics and we have a lot of rainfall. And it's designed to move that water away, basically move it this way, and then it spills down here, which is the natural water flow of my site. Naturally, before I did any of this work on here, the water would kind of flow right down here. So I'm trying to mimic that in my pathway and just reinforce where the water flows so it doesn't get destroyed. And I'm allowing for this path to move that water when it's in excess. But when it's not in excess, and it's just a pretty big rain event, but it's not like overflow rain event, what happens is this deep gravel here, you can see I'm not even getting to the bottom yet of this gravel area. So the water itself is held in the gravel, and you coming to visit? The water's held in the gravel, and it's not going to overspill. Sorry, I'm blinding you and moving real quick. It's not going to overflow over here until it gets to this point. So at this level right here, this is my spillway with this little wooden block here. When the water level up here gets above that, which is probably about 1 inch down into this gravel on the upper part there, that's when this will start spilling over water. But until then, it's holding that water up here in this landscape and thereby basically sinking water in right here, and that water moves down and feeds all of these beds. So creating areas where water can sink in, you basically want to slow down the water, you want to slow it, you want to spread it, and you want to sink it. Those are the three things. We talk about that a lot in permaculture. Slow, spread, and sink. And that goes pretty much with any sort of energy, and it goes really well with this specific permaculture principle of catch and store energy, is that you want to slow down energy from leaving your property, you want to spread it out across your property, and then you want to sink it in so it stays as long as possible. So that's what I'm doing up here on this path. And up here on this grassy area, this is basically our access to get to our clotheslines here, and also just to get across the garden. But this is also an area where I'm actually catching and storing the water. So when it rains, the water flows here, and then right up against the actual bed here, on this kind of small little raised bed where my tomatoes are growing, this area is slightly divoted right here. So a small little divot, and you can see that where the grass is growing really long. That's usually where the most water is getting to. So what happens is right here, grass is naturally going to, take water and then let it sink in a little bit. And so I'm trying to replicate that by the same exact thing I had down there with, you were not wanting to move. There we go. Sorry guys, my camera did not want to move from where I was pointing it. Same thing's happening as the path down there, but here in grass instead. Now this is also a great way to do it. If you don't want to add gravel, having grass paths, it's going to do the exact same thing with the benefit of constantly adding essentially soil structure because the roots are there. So the water flows down, especially from right here. This is like a little overflow from this bed just to make sure it doesn't get completely flooded when it have those heavy rain events. Flows down here and then down, and it sinks in. And it will sink in right at the base of this bed here. And because I have a raised bed, any water that sinks in and keeps moving downhill is going to hit these root zones exactly. So that's kind of my water strategy here for saving and storing water. A couple other different ways that you would easily be able to do it on a property, probably a little bit bigger, and I'm actually still thinking about doing it here, is creating some sort of water storage feature within your property. It's actually cheaper usually to build water storage into your property than it is to actually set up a tank, like a rainwater storage tank. Ooh, sorry guys, you're moving all over the place today. It's cheaper usually to go and store water right in the ground in some sort of water storage tank. So if you have the right kind of clay content and you can make a dam or a small pond, that's definitely a great way to do it because you're also encouraging life in that system. I'm pausing because I see Otto is very gingerly tempting the rooster here. and he's in the garden. Otto, what's the deal? What's the rule here? No garden. You can't go in the garden. All right? All right? So that's the water stuff. If you have any questions about any of these, please leave a comment below. I'm happy to answer questions. In fact, I love answering questions. So please don't hesitate to ask questions if you do have them right below this video. All right, let's move on to the second one. We talked about water. Next thing is soil. And what's cool is water and soil kind of go together. They work hand in hand. So let's look at that real quick. Soil, we started talking about already. A 1% increase in soil organic matter can hold way more water in your soils. And that's the same in your garden beds itself. The more organic matter you have in there and the more soil life that's kind of processing everything in the soil, that's going to actually give you so much water holding capacity. So soil does a really good job at storing that energy in a way, storing that water energy right within the soil by capturing it within all the pore spaces and holding onto it and then using it to water your plants. Soil is also a great storage of carbon. So as sunlight hits plants plus this carbon dioxide within our atmosphere, it essentially is going to create sugars and everything that's going to feed the soil organisms, and it's going to help the plants grow. But in that process, what happens is more and more microorganisms are born, and especially the fungi, especially them in the soil, they have way more carbon in their kind of chemical makeup, in their makeup of their actual bodies. Huge carbon content as they start to mature throughout the soil. So allowing the soil to thrive and allowing the plants to help the soil thrive essentially is taking carbon from the atmosphere that's out here through carbon dioxide and putting it into forms that the plants and the microorganisms can use, and that's actually stored in the soil as long as you keep building soil. If you're building soil, you're doing carbon sequestration, and that's something that's really important to note. If you're building soil, you are sequestering carbon on your property. Now think about that. That's one of our biggest goals right now in terms of climate change, is we need to sequester a lot of carbon. And really all you have to do is make sure that you're building soil health, because the more soil health you have and the more soil you can build, the more carbon you can sequester in the ground. And that is an amazing storage of energy, because that carbon is then going to turn into more plants and more growth. And that's really important in the permaculture philosophy, but also just in life. We need to make sure that we're trying to store as much energy as we possibly can in these systems, because if you have energy stored in your system, then you don't have to be inputting energy, at least not long term. You just need the sun to keep shining, and let's hope that that's going to keep happening, you know? So that's a really great storage mechanism, the soil. It does such a great job, and it pretty much does it for us. We don't have to do much to actually help it other than keep that soil biology there, keep it mulch, keep it moist, and keep plants growing. That's pretty much all you have to do to be building your soil. You have to keep feeding it. Soil is essentially just a big mouth. It needs to keep being fed. And either that's organic material. Again, if you look into nature and you think about how nature does that, it's in the temperate climates at least, is every fall there's this big drop of organic material from the trees back down to the soil in the form of leaf fall. And then those leaves basically blanket the soil for the whole winter and allow that kind of soil biology to be okay and live throughout that winter with all that food and all that protection from the harsh elements. And then come spring, as that's all been broken down, there's this huge flush of new growth. It happens naturally in nature. We can just copy that. So storing that carbon in the ground is going to store potential future energy for your plants right down there in the ground. Building soil, I can't stress it enough, if you can build soil, and anyone can do this, if you build soil on your property and you focus on building soil, you're building this resource that very soon, when we all need to be growing our own food for X or Y reasons, you're ready. You're ready to go. You can grow pretty much whatever you want if you have the right soil. And of course, you're going to have to adapt towards the microclimate that you're living in and the general climate. You know, I'm not going to be able to grow temperate climate crops very well here in the tropics, other than just those basic annuals that we all grow. But there's always adaptation, but you can pretty much grow anything that can grow in your climate. If you have good soil and you have decent water, you're going to be set. So let's talk about actually using some of that energy to actually grow trees. Storing energy in trees, you're basically taking all that carbon that we were just talking about from the soil, but instead of an annual crop where it's just a quick pump of that energy and then we consume that of some sort in some way, trees are going to be storing that energy within their actual tree structure and all that woody material and all the bark and all the leaves and the stuff they produce, right? So long-term energy storage. How long can a tree live? Well, many different trees can live hundreds and thousands of years. That's been proven throughout time, right? And that's a storage of carbon directly from the atmosphere right into the trunk of their trees. And it's pretty amazing that we can do that just by planting trees. It's not even that hard. All we have to do is plant trees, let them grow long-term, and then we have this beautiful carbon storage. It has so many other benefits as well. It helps kind of modulate the weather, make it a little more tolerable, especially in your hot climate, in the arid climates. If you're anywhere in an arid climate, you know that most people are going to be flocking around one of those trees in the middle of the day to get some of that shade. It's such a great thing to have. Bananas, we call them banana trees, but they're actually herbs, so I'm not actually going to talk about those. But papayas, this is a tree, and this tree can be productive, and it's a fairly short-term tree. It's not a tree that's going to last a long time. But I'm taking essentially this carbon, this storage, and it's going to grow up, and it's going to end up being shade for the stuff I'm going to be planting beneath it. And it's going to be storing all that carbon and all that nutrient that it's taking from the ground within its leaves. And so these leaves become mulch that is basically a carbon storage and a nutrient storage within this leaf structure. And then that mulch, as the soil life break it down, is just going to go right back into the soil. So, and this is the same thing I was talking about in temperate climates with trees. That big leaf fall, that's a big nutrient cycling that's happening. The trees are pulling the nutrients up from the soil, putting it into their leaves, and then dropping it all. And that's exactly what happens. It's a big nutrient cycler that can keep going for years and years and years. Now, in the tropics here, I'm using high shade to help protect my crops from the blistering heat of the midday tropics. It gets really, really hot between about 9 and 3. And so I use these trees within my garden to help me modulate the temperature beneath them to help my crops do better, but also to store a lot of carbon right here in this tree. And it's not just carbon. I keep saying carbon, but it's nutrient too. It's a storage of nutrients. And then those nutrients gets passed on to us if you can eat that tree in any way. If it's a fruiting tree or an edible tree like this moringa, this powerhouse of a tree right here. These leaves on this tree are super high in protein, lots of minerals. So this is just like basically a come and eat it. I give this to my chickens. I put this in salads. I do all those different things because this is a powerhouse of a plant. And it's just, see this huge tree? This tree actually I think was planted about 3 or 4 years ago by my mom. And look at that. Look at all this carbon that's stored. Look at all the nutrient that's potentially there. And we can actually use that tree. So that's the thing is, yeah, it's a storage for your actual property. It's helping pump nutrients. It's helping pump water from deep down up into your soil. It's doing so many things for you that maybe you're not thinking of. And it's also potentially something for you to eat. It's amazing. These coconuts, look at this. This tree, it's producing so much organic material for me to use as mulch through these leaves. Anytime they fall, I just cut them up and use them for my compost and use them for bulk mulch. The actual coconuts themselves, I take those and we obviously eat the meat in there and drink the water and use all the products there. And then we use those coconuts right there to do things like line our beds. So look at that. Instead of having me go by edging, this coconut tree produced it for me. It's also a great, as it starts to break down, the husks become great compost material and great kind of seed starting material. I'm sure you've used composted, or many of you have used composted coconut husks as a seed starting material mixed in some sort of form. They buy them in bags. Cocoa coir, basically. Yeah, that comes from coconuts. So it's this amazing resource that we can essentially make work for us, but even if it's not working for us, it's working for our property, it's working for our land, and it's working especially for the environment. So trees, great energy storage. It can stay there years and years. It can by far outlast us as humans. And it's definitely, if you can do one thing, plant trees, plant trees. Okay, the final thing we're going to talk about is seeds. So seeds are an amazing storage of energy, and it's not just energy, it's also genetic material, and it's also adaptation to your local climate. So saving seeds is one of the most important things you can do, because you're taking the energy, all that energy that the plant used to produce those seeds, saving them, and then that will become a new plant if you actually plant it and get it going. So saving seeds is like trees, probably the most important thing. Saving tree seeds, very, very important. Super important, because then you can basically keep planting trees your whole life. But saving seeds of any kind, that's basically just like a tiny bundle of energy that can essentially become something that can then produce for you, especially if it's a food producing plant. So here on my homestead, you can see here, this is all cilantro that's gone to seed, and it's now becoming cilantro seed. So I just basically am letting this go to seed, and some of these here are ready already, these kind of brown ones. So every day I just come out and look at this and see which ones I can harvest. I can probably harvest a couple of these brown ones down here, like right here. That one's good. This one's good. I think there's one more, this one. So right there, that's, ooh, lost one. Wah wah. But right there, that's future cilantro. And that's future cilantro that's adapted to my site, which in the tropics is great, because while it does fine in like hot climates, right? Super hot climates, maybe not so much. And we have a pretty specific kind of rainforest-like climate, right? So I take these seeds and I can save them and then plant them in the future. But what I've been doing is actually just throwing them right down into this bed here, because I want there to be a bunch of cilantro growing here. So I keep throwing it, knowing that those seeds are adapted to my site and likely will actually just start. I won't have to do much to actually get them started. They'll likely start because they're already used to growing here. They started and grew their whole life about 6 feet away, and they did great there without much input from me. So I know they're going to perform well here. Saving seeds, that's such a huge idea. I mean, just think about seeds. That, like, if there's a huge global crisis and we still have our huge bank of seeds, we can start eating. We have to rebuild some soil, put them in the ground, and they're going to start producing for us. And that tiny seed, and especially with trees, there's some tree seeds that are tiny, and that tree seed goes in the ground and grows and can grow for hundreds and thousands of years. That's an amazing energy storage. Very, very compact energy storage. It's essentially life stored in a small little capsule. So catching and storing those seeds, seed saving is such an important thing, and I've stressed this before, I've talked about it before, but if you can save seeds, and anyone can, there are some things you need to learn, you need to know a couple specifics, but saving seeds is such an important thing for you to think about doing, especially when you're thinking about catching and storing energy, because basically you allowed that plant to go through its full life cycle. So it's already lived, it's already pumped energy up into its constituent parts, and then use that energy to produce those seeds. So if you take that seed and then you use it back on your property, you're cycling those nutrients and all that genetic data from your site right back onto your land. And you can use it again and again and again. If you keep seeding, if you keep saving seeds, it just goes on and on. All right, folks, that's it for us today. Otto and I saying bye. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you do like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe to the channel. It does a lot to help me actually get more reach and be motivated. Anytime I see some new subscribers, I'm just really excited, because I'm like, ooh, someone else wants to keep seeing my videos. And to me, that's interesting. And I know right now, most of y'all out there are probably my I know they're my parents and my friends and my family who just want to support me and kind of encourage me along the way. But anyone else who's out there watching this, I know there has to be more than just my family. It just really means a lot for me. Anytime you subscribe or you like my videos or anything like that, it just gives me a little bit of that, hey, keep going, hey, keep going. You know, it keeps me motivated to keep producing these videos, because basically right now what I'm doing is waking up early and I'm filming, and then either I'm editing immediately and trying to get it up for you, or then I go and start doing work of some sort. Either it's work up at Hacienda Rosa or work here on the property, or if I have to go elsewhere to do something. So this is just all fitting into my day, and I'm just trying to do this for you guys, and so I can share this knowledge that I've gained so far, because I just think it's really important to share that knowledge and to really allow anyone to do what I'm trying to do here in my backyard. This can all be learned by anyone, including you. So if you ever thought, I don't know if I could do that, I don't know if I should start growing a garden, I should start building soil, just start. Follow these videos. I'll help you along the way. Comment below, ask me questions. I want to help you guys. I want to start this community and make it a kind of rampant community that we can all help each other. And especially for right now, when I'm starting, getting people together who are working and growing in the tropics. Would love to hear more from you. What are you doing in your gardens? What's working for you? What's not working? What are challenges you've had? All that information is great for all of us to have, and we can all learn from. And that's another way of catching and storing energy and knowledge. We haven't really mentioned that, but that's a huge energy store. It took a lot of energy for me to learn all the stuff that I've learned so far. It's stored up here, but I know that up here can be a little questionable, so I'm trying to store it here to the camera so that you guys can learn from it. But then in the future, I can go back and be like, oh, look at that. You were smart back then, when I start, losing my mind and things start going a little weird, But that's the future. For now, I still have the knowledge. Listen to me. I'm not crazy. And anyway, that's it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day and you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.